You guys have asked for it, so here it is, a complete tour of not only my Lego city, but also my Lego Wild West MOC. I'll also show you how I've connected the two different worlds by destroying my walls and connecting the train tracks through different rooms, so the train can actually run a full loop through the different worlds. I think I'll start off by showing you an overview of how I've connected the whole thing, and then we start the tour in the Lego city. Following the train tracks in the Lego city, you can actually see them disappearing in this mountain back here, which actually covers up the hole I've cut into this wall. And this brings me to the next room, which is the space in between the different worlds. So this is what the other side of the train tunnel looks like. We can actually see through the tunnel into the Lego city right here. Then the train tracks go through the hole I've cut into the wall. We have two different sidings in order to have a bit more storage for additional trains and locomotives and whatever. And then this is the second hole I've cut into the wall, which then leads into the Wild West section on the right hand side, onto the back side, and right here into the tunnel. I'm not sure if you can see it, but if we follow this tunnel, we're actually immediately in the Wild West MOC. Coming out of the tunnel, this is what the other side looks like. And if we follow along the train tracks, you can actually see them going through the canyons back here, passing two different bridges and then going down the slope and then disappearing once again behind the canyons, which actually cover up the hole in the wall. I'll of course let the train run a few loops at the end of the tour, but for now I'll start off in this corner with a small castle up here. I'm actually thinking about extending the whole thing. For now, well, it's not a full castle to be honest, but what I really like is this feature down here, which is a small cave with a few skeletons, a treasure, and this then completes this area. What I'm actually doing right here is adding these sort of pine trees, which differ from the pine trees I'm adding at the end of the Lego city, where there's the big mountain. So let me get a comparison between the two different pine trees. So as you can see, the pine tree I'm using in the back, I have in my hand right here, is much smaller than the pine tree I'm using in front, and secondly, not at all as detailed as these trees and therefore time consuming. The reason I'm using these type of pine trees in front is because it's important to have this sort of detail in the foreground, and the further away something is in a layout like this, the less important it is to add details, which is the first reason I've changed the structure of the pine trees back there. And the second reason is I'm actually sizing down the trees in order to make the mountain look taller. So that's something I always like to keep in mind when designing big layouts like this. Following the train tracks, we firstly have a church, which actually has a full interior. Unfortunately, I cannot remove the roof because I've connected that to the tower. This was important for the aesthetics of the building, but I can show you a picture right now of how the interior looks. Continuing, we have this small medieval looking village consisting out of German half-timbered houses. I've actually designed every single house myself. Unfortunately, Lego doesn't provide us with houses like this, which is really unfortunate to be honest. I'm thinking about adding interior soon. I've prepared everything. As you can see, the roofs are removable, but for now I'm honestly too lazy, and it wouldn't really change anything with the overall view of the city. And for now, I'm focusing on the aesthetic of the city in general. At some point, I'll add interior, but well, not for now. The most complicated house is probably this one right here because of the tower. I've added hinges, as you can see right here, which was really difficult to measure. And also the roof sort of has an angle built in. Back here where I've used the normal slopes or roof tiles, these roofs are actually so much easier to build and also more stable to be honest, but I always sort of prefer to have the studs on top of the roof because then the building looks like Lego to be honest, and that's something I sometimes really appreciate. Right besides the small stream in my Lego city, I have a water mill which is actually fully functional, so let me remove the roof real quick. This is the inside. It isn't complicated at all. And then I use the power functions in order to start the water mill. And well, as you can see, there's the waterfall in the back at the mountain, which leads into the lake. And then the stream passes through several bridges actually, and then leads to the water mill, which looks a bit weird without the roof, okay? But other than that, I think it's pretty idyllic. Then following the train tracks, we have a small signal box right here in this triangle of train tracks, which I really like. It's probably one of my favorite spots in the whole city. And then we actually have the main part of the Lego city. I've based this section on a mixture of buildings in Amsterdam and also my hometown Innsbruck. I can also show you a video right now of the main row of houses I've based my 16 by 16 stud modular building MOCs back there on. When it comes to the main part of the Lego city, we actually have the railway station in front, which actually has a full interior, which, as you might have figured out by now, is not very common, at least in the rural area of the city. Then we have a museum, several cafes, right here for example, and also back there. The row of houses in the back actually all have full interiors. I'll show you that in just a second. And then right here we have a bank on top of the parking garage. And for the rest of this section, I think it's better if I switch sides. So as mentioned, all the different buildings back here actually do have an interior. Well, prime example right here. Not every single building has an interior, but most buildings do. And let me remove one more floor right here. As you can see, it's all modular. So you can theoretically also switch around different buildings as you wish, but well, it then sort of ruins the aesthetics of the whole thing. But it's a nice play feature, I guess. And in future, I also plan to light the whole thing up. And then it's important to actually have something inside. Otherwise, it wouldn't look good. So up here, it actually gets a bit more interesting when it comes to the interior because of the storytelling that's going on. Up here, we have people faking and printing money and then transporting it to this mafia bank, which is going on. I've just recently made a video about this. I won't go too much into detail, but when it comes to the overall structure of this section up here, you can actually see the street that goes up. And how I've achieved that is by using the SNOT technique, which stands for studs not on top. As you can see, these are all bricks which are built onto the side. And therefore, you can see how flexible this whole thing is. And this is then simply laid on and, well, you can simply bend it, then connect it via brick modifieds. And this then connects the street with the rest of the city, the base plates, and so on. Up here you can actually see a few original Lego buildings, but this is only to test the spacing. In the long run, I only want buildings I've completely 100% designed myself and not original Lego buildings. I don't think there's any skill involved in randomly slapping modular buildings together, to be honest. So that's sort of this challenge I have for myself. Up here where I'm sitting right now, where all this empty space is, I'm actually planning on building a few more skyscrapers. This is one of the future skyscrapers which will then be integrated into the city. And also this building right here has full interior. Let me show you. This is a bit different than all these other buildings. I haven't made the different floors removable, but as you can see, I've used hinges in order to get access to the interior. When it comes to this building, we actually have the lobby down there. Then half a floor, if you will, up here with a bar. I think if we peek through the window, we might be able to see this guy enjoying his drink. Then there's the first apartment up here. Everything obviously goes around the corner here. Then up here, there's this sort of spa area. Also, right here, if any minifigure topples over, this is extremely important to have in order to fix that. The windows are large enough in order to see everything that's going inside. But the reason I've added this sort of door is primarily in order to fix if something falls over inside. And then up here, there's the large penthouse, which then extends over 2 different floors right on top of the building. Oh yeah, and then there's one more feature to the building I haven't shown you yet, which is actually the elevator, which can be operated manually. I haven't added any sort of motorization, but to be honest with you, it doesn't really bother me too much. And as you can see right now, I'm behind the Lego city, and this is actually the support structure of the mountain, since some of you were interested in that. And well, you can see it's extremely chaotic here. I always try to keep everything at least somewhat organized and clean, but it simply doesn't work. I've read somewhere that creative people are more chaotic, so that's my excuse for that, to be honest with you. This then leads me to the Wild West MOC. I'll comment on the different buildings in just a second, but I'll start off with the different stories that are going on. So up here, we have a gold mine, as you can see back there in this corner. And the story that's going on right here is gangsters are planning a robbery on the gold mine. And the miners, as you can see, are actually throwing down barrels into the canyon and somewhat trying to defend their gold mine and what they've mined for the day. The next story is this sort of prison break, which is happening right here. 2 riders, which are actually removing the prison bars, and different gangster members which are waiting for the sheriff to arrive in order to shoot him down. So as you can see, there's always action in the city, not only these sort of stories, but then there's, for example, this horse which escaped and is trying to be captured. Although I gotta say, I definitely need to add a bit more life to this square. Back here we have more gangsters planning a robbery. They are actually waiting for the train that arrives, and then, well, not sure what they exactly are waiting for, if there's a gold transport passing by, but they are actually loading up their weapons, as you can see. And let me go around into this corner, because the view up here is actually pretty nice if you ask me, and it's probably a good strategic spot in order to rob a train. When it comes to the buildings in the Wild West MOC, we have the station in front, where I've actually added these brick-built ladders, which you can find back there with the saloon and the bank. This is sort of the stylistic element I wanted to add to some of my buildings in the Wild West MOC. In front you can see a water tank for different steam trains. A church obviously has to be in a Wild West layout. The sheriff's office, and what's at this point definitely lacking are normal residential buildings, so I might add 1 or 2 more of those. And this out here is the area I'm working on right now. We've just finished the graveyard. The next plan would be to finish off the train crossing, which then connects the city or the town, whatever you want to call it, with the rest of the theoretical Wild West world, which would obviously be going on out there forever. And what I wanted to do is not have the town separated by the train tracks. With all that being said, it's time for the most fun and also, let's face it, most important part of the whole video. Let's let the train run. So this will be quite stressful for me because I have to run from room to room. This locomotive is actually based on an Austrian locomotive. If the train disappears back here, I might actually be able to show you a picture. So at this moment, the train is passing through the back right there, and there we can see it through the arcades, and here it should be. Yes, there it is. And now, let's go. I'm sorry if I can't comment at the moment, but we have to be able to catch the train. I know the train doesn't fit into the Wild West MOC, but I don't care at the moment. And let's go. I told you, this is the most fun part. There we are, and here we are once again. So, honestly, I could do that for hours. So there's obviously still a lot of empty space in the Lego city at this point, especially here in front. I was either thinking of extending the railway section, or this would be the other possibility, have a few more buildings in front right here. But this is one argument against that. I don't want to block the view onto the railway station. So maybe if you have an idea, you can leave that in the comments. Then another thing that will be quite time consuming and also expensive is the mountain. There's still a lot of vegetation missing. I'll obviously not leave the empty studs with the bricks. So over the next couple of Lego City updates, I'll add a couple 100 trees. I've ordered the pieces already. I tried to keep the tour of the Lego City as short and compact as possible, although I gotta say I already realized that I've missed a few points. For example, the robbery that's going on in the museum, which actually has a full interior, but I think for this walkthrough of the Lego City, I've shown you more than enough, and I'll see you again in the next Lego City update.